Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Garrity.
And welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Good, bad, and crazy martinis for conservatives today, as usual. And, Jim, we start with an unusual good martini because we're saying pretty good things about some pretty liberal members of the mainstream media. Today we're going to focus on a column for the Washington Post by Eugene Robinson, who is a staple, as you might know, on MSNBC, particularly shows like Hardball, very often carrying the water for the Obama administration and other Democrats, but not today when it comes to Hillary Clinton refusing to simply tell the truth or own up to her actions as it relates to the private email server and particularly the issue of scrubbing it clean. He starts by saying this isn't about whether Hillary Clinton wins the Democratic nomination, which is likely. It isn't even about whether she becomes our next president, which she has a better chance of doing than anyone else. It's about basic respect for us and for the truth. And further on down, he says, so I wish Hillary Clinton would be respectful enough to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I wish she wouldn't insult our intelligence by claiming she only did what other secretaries of state had done. None of her predecessors, after all, went to the trouble and expense of a private email server. So, Jim, they're a little late to the game, but as Chuck Todd mentioned the other day, the fact that the FBI is involved now means a lot of people have to reevaluate the severity of this story.
Yeah, you can throw in Mika Brzezinski with her statement. I mean, does she think we're stupid? And, many people said, yes, Mika, she does. You can also throw in kind of the columnist for The Guardian that says, I'm a fan of Hillary Clinton, but it's time to give it up. Not even sure this columnist is registered to vote in the United States, so we shouldn't overstate that. But I think it's real interesting here. The media is calling on her to do something she's never really done, right? I mean, the Clinton approach has always been deny, 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 and then 6 months later admit that, yes, indeed, you did have an inappropriate relationship with the intern, even though you've sent your entire administration to go out and say that the whole thing was a pack of lies from the beginning. And what we have here is this the media beginning to realize how much they get played like a fiddle by the Clintons, that they know that their fans are going to go out and defend them, even if they have these nagging doubts that maybe it's not quite true. And in this case, I mean, basically she wants the spin to be, this is just more partisan politics. What do you expect? Except that the FBI is involved, and the FBI is not an extension of the Republican National Committee. If there was nothing there, they would not bother with this. There is no eagerness to investigate the Democratic frontrunner. So she really has gone out on a limb too far for most of the media, and they're begging her to say, look, just admit that you made mistakes, admit that you made the wrong decision, and let's be able to move on. And you can tell they're so itching to move on from this, but they can't. I put the odds of Hillary Clinton coming out and admitting she shouldn't have used the private server and it was a wrong decision and things like that. She can't. She can't do that because then she gives her opposition ammunition, and they'll beat them over the head with it. The Clintons never apologize. They never backtrack. It's always the fault of their foes, and I don't really see her coming to terms with this. So I think the press is going to be ending up in this endless circle of, oh, come on, Hillary, just apologize and we can move on. And when a guy like Eugene Robinson is saying this, it's become a case where it's too glaring for him to write his usual Republican stink column.
Exactly. And an interesting parallel to this, Chris Christie was with a couple of the folks over on CNN. I think it was Chris Cuomo, and I can't remember who the other one was, but they were talking about the Hillary Clinton scandal. And Chris Christie was saying, look, I was a U.S. attorney for several years. They made it very clear if you conduct official business, you conduct it on the official government account. And they said, well, the previous secretaries of state have done this. And he says, not exclusively. Nobody else had their own private email server installed at great expense to do this. And just when they were still trying to determine whether or not there was actually grounds for a major scandal here, Chris Christie dropped this bomb on them.
Let's just say I have an analogy here. Can you imagine if after the bridge investigation began, I came out and said, oh, by the way, I've done all of my business as governor on a private email server, and I've deleted now 30,000 of those emails, but trust me, none of it had to do with the bridge. Give me a break.
Jim, they went wall-to-wall on MSNBC for weeks without any emails.
It's a really fair point from Christie. It illuminates this, and If the media had shame, this would really get to them. There's just one small, minor miscalculation in Christie's argument there, and it's that they have shame or they feel any obligation to have consistency in their coverage.
All right. Well,
other than that, it's a great plan.
Yeah, so interesting. Kudos to the media on one side, shame on the media in another sense with that martini today. All right, on to the bad martini now. And if you're wondering the impact of the Obama administration to date, take a look at some of these new numbers as cited in a column for the Orange County Register by columnist Joel Kotkin. He says that according to Gallup, Americans were polled. Americans who feel there is plenty of opportunity ahead has dropped precipitously from 80% in 1997 to 52% today. Then also recently in a Wall Street Journal NBC poll, parents today generally see things getting worse for their offspring and grandchildren, with only 21% expecting things to get better for the new generation compared with 49% back in 2001. And Kotkin goes on to talk about in this editorial, Jim, that Barack Obama has focused on progressive ideas like sexual liberation, racial issues, and environmental determinism. And obviously, the president has spent a lot of time on those issues and advancing them from his perspective. Certainly many on the right would disagree with progress being made there. They've done nothing to create opportunity, particularly for young people.
Yeah, no, I've been very critical of Donald Trump, as listeners know, but I'm something that's pretty indisputable here, and that he deserves, if not credit for, just kind of an indicator of why he's so resonating, is because ultimately his slogan is, look, let's make America great again. This really touches people. This strikes a chord. This really gets a sense that we have lost something. And I think that the polling numbers you pointed to there really kind of indicate this. The American dream, the American dream is not, to live like Donald Trump. It's not to live in a palace. It's not wild or unrealistic. It is, to own your own home, to have a little corner of the world you call your own, to live for your life as the way you wish, and to leave a little something, let your kids live a better life than you did. That's not unreasonable. And somehow that seems to be pulling away from us in a rapidly changing economic environment, a world that seems less safe, a government that's spending into oblivion and wasting all the money, and just kind of the sense of despair, the sense of endless government dependency on an ever less competent government. And so, look, I think actually the more we see Trump continue, not just rise, but to stay there, that this was not just some brief fling, that he's really hitting something. It's a bit of an indictment on the rest of the Republican field that no one's been able to articulate this message in a way that resonates with people the way Trump has. And even if you have big disagreements with him, as I do, Trump's fans believe he could get it done right now. And that is a need that needs to be met right now. So we will see how that shakes out. But I think it's kind of an indicator that there's this yearning for leadership, this yearning for boldness, this yearning for a sense of, hey, we're going to be great again. And, hopefully somebody will step up in this coming cycle and be the man or woman to do it.
All right, on to the crazy martini now. And we should point out, before we get into this one, a quick follow-up from a bad martini from last week. Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona has made up his mind on the Iran deal, and he will vote no. So while he seemed to be the last potential Republican holdout, at least in the Senate, for supporting the president on this, he has said in recent days that he will not be supporting it. He will, in fact, support the resolution to reject it. So kudos to Senator Flake on that. However, Bob Corker, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, has come out with an opinion piece in the Washington Post explaining how he came into this process with an open mind. He looked carefully at the deal, and in the end, he is going to vote no as well. He says that rather than end Iran's nuclear enrichment program, over time this deal industrializes the program of the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. He says it needs to be built on verification and not trust. The fun part, of course, is the first paragraph in this story, Jim, where he says, by passing the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act with enough votes to overcome a veto, Congress ensured that it would have the opportunity to review and vote on the nuclear agreement with Iran. Well, yeah, that means you get to vote no, and you get a nice, healthy majority, but it's highly unlikely that you're actually going to get to stop it.
Gee, Senator, if only there was something we could have done differently to stop this deal. If only, say, Republicans had insisted that this is indeed a treaty and must be treated as such and must be approved by a majority, but no, we had to go along with this other idea in which we, basically vote to reject the change to the sanctions and vote to keep them in place, and Obama gets to, basically putting the pressure on the Republican majority and basically giving the Democrats control over it. And there just aren't, despite what Chuck Schumer did, there just aren't enough Democrats who are going to change, who are going to go against their president. At least I don't think so. We'll see how this shakes out. Schumer is a nice little consolation prize, but so far we haven't seen a cascade effect amongst the Democrats. So Corker's going to have a lot to answer for on this, and I'm glad that he's coming out against it. But in the end, look, Corker, you kind of set up the arrangement for this deal, and you're kind of one of the reasons we're in this mess that we are.
It's often said, because those were lopsided votes in the House and Senate, either when a vote is completely lopsided in a really partisan and bitterly divided Congress, it's either a complete no-brainer or you've accomplished nothing. My sense is it's probably the latter. There's
going to be a decent argument from the opposition forces that they've got a bipartisan majority against it, but just not a big enough one. And you'd kind of left yourself, wait a minute, why did we end up in this situation where you need not just a majority, but a supermajority to stop what is a really radical, far-reaching change to American policy towards Iran? And ultimately, it comes, that's almost entirely on Corker for going along with it.
Yeah, could have been a slam dunk, and now playing catch up and probably unsuccessfully. Jim, we'll leave it there for today. Talk to you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today, and be sure to tune in again on Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.